Hey everyone, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be talking about GDPR. And GDPR is a law, it stands for General Data Protection Regulation, and it's a law that was passed in a lot of EU countries in the UK a few years ago, and it basically talks about what organisations need to do to protect people's data. That's essentially what it means. But it's really great to prove your impact in bug bounties, not just stopping at, oh, this is information disclosure, but really making your target think about the wider implications of what you found. Because GDPR has some high fines for organizations, and especially for demonstrating that kind of escalation aspect. It's a really great way to demonstrate that you understand what they care about as well. So today I'm going to be talking about what GDPR is and what it means for bug bounty hunters and how you can use it to justify, maybe an increase in severity, or talking about an increase in impact, or really help you express your impact using terms that your target and the bug bounty program is going to be familiar with. I always say to people that impact is about making the client really scared, essentially. Like making them look at you and go, oh, that's so bad, we should not have left that in. And this is where GDPR can come in really handy. So this video is very kindly sponsored by Integrity. Integrity is a fast-growing bug bounty platform, so they have the targets, they allow you to report the bugs, and they're the people that pay you out. Now, because it's a fast-growing platform, there is so many opportunities, huge opportunities, new programs and scope changes all the time. They always send me emails with scope changes, and that's super helpful. There's always plenty of new and fresh things to hack in both their public programs and their invite-only programs as well. I love working with them because they're actually huge supporters of the bug bounty community, sponsoring not just my content, but other creators as well. I know a lot of people have already signed up, and you probably even found your first bug on Integrity, and I'm really happy for you all. If you would like to sign up too and join us, you can use my link on screen. It's go.integrity.com/Katie. It's also in the video description. A sponsorship really helps me invest more into my channel, e.g. equipment to improve the audio. So I really hope you give them a lot of love from our community to theirs. And I'm promoting them because I really do think they provide something great. So again, the link is go.integrity.com/Katie. Now, I realise this is not monthly because it's taken me a few months to get back into video production. Sorry about that. I ended up leaving my job at BugCrowd. I then had to move. Very, very tiring. But the monthly giveaway is still on. Same rules as last time. I'm just expanding it until we hit a month after the final video. So the prizes up for grabs are 1 lifetime membership to bugbountyhunter.com. There's 10 InsiderPhD swag packs on offer, and actually we have some stickers there provided by Integrity and from Burp as well, so I'm going to be sending some kind of co-branded stickers. 5 1-month memberships to Pentester Lab Pro, and 5 2-month Try Hack Me Premium memberships. So if you would like to win, you should comment on this video with an answer to the following question: what bug do you think is the most misunderstood? So what bug do you think clients just sometimes don't get? What bug do you have a look at and go, that doesn't really make sense to me? Make sure you include the hashtag misunderstoodNA with your answers, so that way I can filter them out super easily. So I want to start by saying I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice. This is me explaining the laws created by GDPR legislation and how it protects personal identifiable information. That means that what you shouldn't take here is any kind of legal advice. It's just helping you to understand the laws that are in place. If you're unsure and need to take legal advice, you should of course do so in your jurisdiction, not listening to a YouTube video. Now, what I'm trying to get at here is not here's GDPR and here's a bunch of really detailed information about it. I would like you to be able to fully explore the impact of information disclosure vulnerabilities and actually be able to explain it in your reports in a really thoughtful way that takes advantage of how your bug bounty programs are going to be thinking about GDPR. So what is GDPR? So GDPR is a data protection law that was basically passed in the European Parliament in EU countries. So the way the EU works is that there's different types of laws that they make. So it's basically a European Parliament, and in the European Parliament, they have directives and regulations. Now, regulations must go into national law of each country in the EU. Directives don't have to, and can have some changes, or they can be more specific. So, for example, you may know that the UK, when it was in the EU, didn't use the euro. You may know that, say, for example, some members have different types of laws. Now, what it really did for the EU country is it overhauled a lot of countries' laws on data, and especially bringing it to the kind of next level. And even if you don't live in the EU, or live in a country like the UK, which is not in the EU but has implemented some of this, you'll probably already heard of GDPR. Like, it revolutionized so much, and a lot of companies that were non-compliant with GDPR realized, oh, hang on, this is something I have to care about, even though I'm based in the US. Now, I'm going to be talking a lot today about the EU's implementation of GDPR, because that's what I'm familiar with, because I live in the EU. So, GDPR in a nutshell. One, it applies to all organizations who operate within the EU, or with EU citizens' data. That means just because a company is based in India in the US, it's not like exempt from GDPR. It is if it's processing somebody in the EU. That does mean that if you are in the EU, you shouldn't be lying about not being in the EU to get around GDPR. Now, any organization processing or holding data must get consent for your data to be held, notify you of a breach, explain why they need the data, explain what processing will occur, and how long it's stored for. So what that means is basically you can't just hold data about people randomly. You need to explain why, you need to have limitations on it, you need to have consent. Data subjects, so that's people, can request data be removed, updated, and provided to them if there is a data breach, and any organisation must inform the individuals affected within a certain time frame. So that means that if you want your data to be removed, they have to comply. They can store some information, primarily about, who you are, so that way they don't store any more data on you. But really, when it comes to requesting data to be removed, they have to comply. Data must be stored in the EU or with countries with similar data protection laws, so that means you can't just get away with not following GDPR by putting your server in a country that doesn't have any data protection laws. And importantly, the failure to abide, so if you go through GDPR and you mess up, you don't follow one of these, the fine is 20 million euros or 4% of the company's annual worldwide turnover, whatever is higher. So that means the higher number there, the minimum fine can be 20 million euros. So if you're familiar with how the US works, the EU doesn't work like that. So each country, which is called a member state, must make their own laws. So it's not like you have federal law. Essentially, you just have like suggestions on laws, and actual laws need to be implemented within a country. Now, the UK voted to leave under a withdrawal agreement in 2020 called Brexit, and this was post-GDPR. So the UK is also going to count for this. I'm going to denote where information comes from in the top corner. So if you see a little Union Jack, the British flag, that's going to be UK specific, or I got it from a UK source and I don't know how widely it applies, or EU sources, which is the EU flag, which is the blue flag with the stars on it. So some legal terms. Personal data means any information that refers to an identified or identifiable individual. Your name is personal data. Your email address is personal data. Your, something that you might want to keep private is still personal data. Data subject is a human, you, essentially. Processing refers to operations performed on data. So that can mean anything. That can be anything from removing, say, your first name to just put an initial in to like connecting your data up with the other types of data available. Controller, which is the organization that collects and stores personal data. So that's kind of like the company. The processor is the organization which processes the data in some way, but does not collect it. So if you think about, say, for example, you fill out a survey, the person collecting that data from you would be the controller, but the person who goes through that and creates graphs and talks about statistics is then the processor. So what is personal data? So actually the term personal data under GDPR is actually really broad. It's any information that identifies somebody. It doesn't have to even be a name. It could be a unique identifier. It can be a collection of data, right? You can't identify somebody. It may not be personal data. So as long as you're identifiable, it counts as personal data. Even if data is wrong or out of date, if it relates to an individual, it's still personal data. And these can like range in what we'd consider private data. So things like your name, probably available to people you know. Your age, again, probably available. But when we start to think about your income info, bank account details, that's something you'd be considered private. So the EU GDPR also has these special categories of data. So this is sensitive data that is further restricted. Race, ethnic origin, political beliefs, religious or philosophical belief, trade union membership, genetic data, biometric data, health data, sex life, and sexual orientation data. All of this has even more restrictions on them. And they also need additional documentation, risk assessments, policy documents. Do you really need this data? And what that means is essentially that a lot of personal data can be really, really private. And organizations have to take steps to secure that. So when we think about personal data, it must be lawfully collected with justification and consent. So don't do anything illegal. Be collected for specific, explicit, and legitimate purposes. You can't just store random data on people. Be adequate, relevant, and limited. You can't just ask for more data because you want more data. Accurate and kept up to date. So it needs to be able to be changed. Kept for no longer than necessary. And then kept secure. So what does kept secure mean? So there's some actual legal text here, but essentially companies have a duty to implement proper security controls for their users. It is not something that can be an afterthought in GDPR. It's something that really has to be front and center. Now, when it comes to data breaches, GDPR actually covers a range of both malicious and accidental acts. So if you send a document to the wrong person, that is also a data breach, just as we got hacked and all of our information is online. So the ICO, which is the UK body, must be notified within 72 hours, and the data subject, so you as a person, without undue delay. So sometimes it's not appropriate to notify subjects, e.g. a record is deleted and then restored from a backup. The ICO can actually compel organizations to inform people. But what that means is you might get an email being like, accidentally we disclosed it. Now, if we break GDPR, you can be fined. Now, Google was fined 50 million euros for not complying with GDPR. The regulator said that individuals were not sufficiently informed on how Google collected data for advertising. So that breaks our first GDPR principle, that a process lawfully, fairly, and transparent manner in relation to individuals. And you can see here that there's actually been a lot of GDPR fines. So there's been 340 fines on GDPR, 158 million euros, and the smallest fine was 90 euros. So that's GDPR in a nutshell. But how does this relate to bug bounty? How do we tie this in? Well, remember those fines? GDPR can hurt. So if an organization isn't processing data securely, for example, if they're not considering that security and privacy of the data, if they're found to be breaking it, they can be fined. And if they have a data breach, they have to reach out to affected people. So we're looking here at both a financial impact of these fines and a reputational impact of being, a company that doesn't care about individuals. So if you look here, you can see some of the most common, the countries with the most breaches. And because GDPR can hurt, we can actually use it to demonstrate an increase in impact. So one way of looking at security is through the lens of the CIA triangle. And that is that information security is going to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if companies don't, if companies make something public that should be very private, we can actually say, you know, that impacts the confidentiality. And under GDPR, it can mean that you could be fined. So higher impact always means higher bounties. The more impact you can prove, the higher the bounties are going to be. And what we need to be able to do is recognize personal data and frame our impact as a GDPR breach. Now, what that means is not necessarily that we're lying to people or trying to force them to pay us money or anything like that. What we're really doing is framing our impact in such a way that that a company can fully understand what the impact of a vulnerability is, rather than just going, oh, yeah, don't worry about it, it's fine. So, in addition, GDPR doesn't just recognize when personal data is just available, but also whether or not it can be changed. And platforms already advertise GDPR compliance. You know, HackerOne, BugCrowd, Integrity all talk about GDPR compliance as a measure of what a bug bounty platform is, or what a bug bounty platform offers. So you may as well include GDPR in your submissions and your reports, because it doesn't cost you anything. Like, explaining it, meeting these kind of advertisements is what they want. So we really want to use GDPR in a report to just really put it into their frames, right? What they care about. So I thought this one was really good. So this is a pretty standard API vulnerability. The API allowed me to obtain information about other users by passing their email address as a query parameter, which then returns their name, username, UID, avatar hash, and email in the response body. Now, again, we've got their name, it's considered personal data. Username might be considered personal data. UID can depend, but there's certainly some personal data there. Now, is this a super impactful vulnerability? No. Is it still useful to be able to frame it in this way? Because what they're looking at when they look at this report is not just, I was able to get people's names, but actually I was able to get personal identifiable information, which is true. Now, they've included a bunch of things in the impact here. They've just said violation of GDPR regulations. I would personally go back and reframe that as maybe GDPR includes a requirement to keep personal data secure. This was really easy, therefore it could be seen as breaking GDPR. And that's kind of, I think, how you frame the impact here. You don't just say GDPR like it's a trap card, right? And it's just going to solve everything. You frame it as a way that, hey, this has personal data in it. And I think some common misunderstandings here that people really may not necessarily know in relation to GDPR data is that any information that identifies someone is personal data, including their email address. If you're able to disclose someone's email address, while it might be seen as an accepted risk, it can be considered personal data under GDPR and therefore should be subject to protections. Your personal data doesn't have to include someone's name, so an IP address could be considered personal data. That any personal data being public is bad. There's actually an idea of accepted risk here. So if it's an email address or something that's already public, actually it can be public, but it could also be private. There's some personal data can be both personal data, but also be public as well. Not all data is equal. Some pieces of data are considered sensitive. So again, we're talking about really anything that would allow someone to be discriminated against would be considered sensitive data. And finally, that a business based in the US doesn't have to follow GDPR. It does. As long as it has is storing EU data, then it must be it must comply with GDPR. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. So thank you again for Integrity for sponsoring my content. I really don't take having an advertiser on the channel lightly, and I really do think they do amazing things for the community. It really has allowed me to make serious investments into my channel, improving the audio and the editing. I've been able to pay for Photoshop so I can do thumbnails. I've been able to pay for things like PowerPoint. Like, they really have enabled me to make great investments in my channel. They really interact with their community, and they're always replying to hackers, and on their community team are well-known hackers in the community. Like, they are not just a faceless corporation. So please do give them a lot of love from, like I said, our community to theirs. You can sign up with my link on the screen or in the video description. So that's go.integrity.com/Katie. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.